our staff. And also on a side note, just remind everyone, you're probably thinking, why is Catherine's bumping up anything, a debt to income ratio? And it does work in this particular down payment assistance. I do remind everyone in our resort communities, the real goal is to decrease the standard 30% of your income on housing cap. With our high cost of living, particularly for our lower income families, it really should be in the 20 to 25 window. So this is not a situation that should work for everything, but for this down payment assistance program, it was a huge help. So just wanted to acknowledge the Roberts and replicants and our great policy team.
Thank you, Scott.
So I have a comment just about the Cottonwoods. So
okay.
It's obviously a great project. It's really exciting, all the people closing and moving in. I was asked to review some loan documents for someone, and so I got a little bit of a better understanding, just being on the board, of the down payment assistance program. Obviously, incredible program. One of the programs looks like it's a no interest. The other program is prime rate minus 2%. So let's say like 4.75% right now. It's compounding interest, and it's a 15-year balloon payment. And just from a purely financial standpoint, it seems like that could become a problem, right? So at the end of 15 years, someone takes a $20,000 loan, they owe $45,000. And so it's forcing a sale. And with 2% non-cumulative appreciation, it's all to me, right? Just as an outsider reading this, it was like, okay, we're giving housing to someone. That's freaking awesome. They can live here. They're getting a very low appreciation because it's non-compounding. Then in 15 years, boom, you got a $45,000 payment. And so I spoke to some of the staff. It sounds like that was set up fully well-intentioned because it wanted to preserve funds, but that might not be the case anymore. And so if that's not the case, I wanted to just kind of ask the board if that's something people would consider with removing it and taking it down to a 0%. To me, again, it feels a little bit profit driven on the down payment assistance program when we're trying to just kind of help these owners.
Okay. Cole, you got any comment on that?
Yeah, I think we've talked about it at a high level at the finance team meeting, especially with the work that we did with the front money to ensure that resource was available. So yeah, we're always open to revising that. And you are right, it is profit driven, but a sub market profit, so that we can turn that resource over internally. But revisiting it is always on the table, and definitely open to where we are as an organization, where the community is, to try and make that program meet the bill.
Cole, could we revise it so it helps the current Cottonwood buyers?
Not currently.
Yeah, I don't know about the timing.
But one last thing I just want to bring up, I think it's a concern of current buyers.
My impression, and I'm not that familiar with the current policy, other than it doesn't appear to be that attractive.
Oh, why couldn't we do it for the current guys? I mean, if we had a quick policy change in June for the buyers, couldn't we do something?
Oh, I mean, if you're talking about retroactively.
I'm talking about people who are trying to buy right now, like Scott's bringing out.
Yeah, I mean, people that have been approved with it, and it's in their financing stack. I don't think there's anything we can do about it there, but I don't know about the timing going forward or anything.
You don't think
we're working with our partner how to facilitate that problem?
I think if you tried to do it in the middle from my initial conversations with Impact Development Fund, who does the underwriting of this program, it would put a halt on it. So those funds would basically freeze, so no one would have access until we went through all of our adjustments to change. I definitely have this on the list of things that I've started for a lessons learned of Cottonwoods or moving forward with forcing. We did talk about this at the finance committee last month, in alignment with kind of one of the supplemental budgets stay for that.
But if we make this, I think we should figure out how to, this is an awkward thing, right? Because if you want to make it easier to access, but it's under the guise that there's general support for removing the restrictions, but like, just do it and then we'll fix it. That's like a lot to promise, but then I think we also need to think about how would this change apply to other people who have used the down payment assistance and are currently under those, like, would we want to make this change across the board for anyone who has used the down payment assistance? Because I think your point about the non-compounding interest component of the deed restriction on the cottonwoods, which doesn't necessarily apply to others in the community who've used the down payment assistance, but the kind of like the interest plus the balloon payment component of it would still have, you know, a return on investment impact. So we could think about, if we wanted to broaden that.
I'm just curious, would that impact our ability to sell the 140% AMI properties? Would that help?
Maybe, I don't know, maybe, I don't know that that's the reason that we're not selling the 140%. My units is not that they don't have access to the right financing mechanisms. It's more.
I don't think we have a 140 that's utilizing TPA funds right now. Majority of it's up to 120. Maybe a hand, I think maybe one or two that are 130.
Any other board comment? Great. Anyone want to pull any of the items on the consent agenda? No. Meeting minutes, balance write-offs, check register, and financial statements.
I have a comment about the minutes.
Okay.
There's a line that says we'd received a grant, I believe, of $500 for Prop 123. I think that was meant to say 500,000.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Good catch, Mark.
Left off the K, sorry. Could you tell me where that is in the minutes, just so it's easier for me to find?
I didn't write the page down, but I know it was right. It was early in the minutes.
Yeah.
Page 2.
Page 2. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I assume we need a motion to approve the consent agenda with one comment on $500,000 and the meeting minutes for April 9th. Have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Cole. Second by, was it Michael? Good. Everybody in agreement? It's gonna be a yay. Aye, that would be that. Is that an aye for everyone? Okay. Anyone have a nay? Good. Good. Okay, staff reports. Now, Lee?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. We have some, actually, I think quite a few updates, in the report, this month. We'll start off with property management. It's that time of year where we're, doing cleanup days and, tenant engagement days at our properties. So, as of right now, we have a date set for May 29th. For Fish Creek to help the residents there kind of get rid of any unwanted trash or stuff that they have around their homes. And then we have a Hillside, Whitehaven scheduled for June 13th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. And we'll have dumpsters at both of those properties, and we'd love to see many staff and board members as possible help us out with that. I'll send out some meeting invites to everyone so you can have that on your calendar. We're still working through a community engagement day for Hillside Village. And but it's looking to be some sort of afternoon in June that we'll get that scheduled. So I'll also get a meeting invite out to everyone once we get that penciled in. There's some flyers floating around on the tables for our ribbon cutting coming up for Cottonwoods. That's May 28th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. I know Lorraine has sent out an email just asking everyone to, if you'd like to attend, RSVP to that. I think we've gotten some pretty decent response up to this point. But just wanted to remind the board that that's coming up here in a couple weeks. And we'd love to see everyone in attendance if possible. There's also other folks, development partners, DOLA, our partners at the city and county and state level that we've also extended an invite to. So anyway, I think that'll be a great event and celebrate a great accomplishment for this organization and the community. So
We're gonna have cocktails.
no cocktails. No.
I make it.
No, I think we're planning on maybe having just some like light kind of, mostly be just touring people through the buildings and letting them see what we built. So from a Cottonwood sales update, I'm gonna turn it over to Alyssa. We've had some good updates here in the last couple of days.
We've had our first 2 closings. We had one yesterday and one this morning. So it was really exciting to sit down with some of these homeowners. These are households that participated in Building 2's 100% lottery. So they've been under contract for just over 50 days now. They're super excited. One of the households chose to sleep in her unit last night and had a bunch of her friends over since she was the only person in the building. So that was exciting. We have 3 more closings tomorrow and anticipate 8 to 20 closings by the end of May. So that should start filling up that building. All of those are in Building 2 really quickly. As of today, we still have 45 units under contract. We have 6 households that have met with the agency and just need to get in and are reviewing their due diligence items to sign that contract. So we anticipate that by middle of next week. So number is 51 units, which is mind-blowing, but it's moving along well and people are really excited. At this time, the only units that are vacant are the units that were run in Building 2's 140. There's 11 of those at this time. Currently, the 130% and 140% for Building 1, that lottery is open and will close next Tuesday on the 19th. So we'll generate that and try and get people moving and hopefully under contract just after Memorial Weekend. So those are all moving along very well. As of today, we've got 9 Prop 123 active DPA loans. So that's totaling just under $200,000. And then we have another 5 that are using that countywide DPA program, which is the one that Scott was alluding to with the interest. We have had a couple households that are doubling up with our DPA, which is kind of the first time we've ever seen that. So that's kind of a good look also just to see where people are sitting financially and what they need to bring to the table. Because of those 5 countywide DPA loans, we've got, I think, enough for 1 more loan, which will lead us into another agenda item today.
How many 140 AMI units have closed? You said there's 11 available. How many?
They haven't closed.
Or how many are
Your contract.
under contract?
Uh, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
9 out of 20.
Yep.
And when does that window close?
The Building 1 lottery has 1,740 units.
So that's 27 total.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I have is, in a worst case scenario, and somehow we have to have 120 or 130% AMI individuals purchase a 140% unit, how much money would that cost?
I don't know that number off of the top of my head right now, but that is something that I'm currently working through. I wanted to see how many people we were able to put into this 130 and 140 lottery. We've got a couple more. I don't have enough people to fill the 21 units between the 130 and 140 currently. So I would anticipate we'll probably have 16 or 18 units that are vacant
Okay.
at the end of this.
My
I
understanding was somebody had calculated like $50,000 per unit, which would be 700,000 roughly.
800 to 900,000.
I'd say, yes, all in all.
Based on the pre-approval letters that I've started collecting before the building won 100%, I think that amount is larger than 50,000 per unit to get it to people that are currently able and ready to buy now. So that's what I'm trying to compare, is those pre-approvals of households that are still extremely interested. We did see some people from building 2 to building 1 who said, I can't wait until the next lottery. I'm just going to sign a year lease. So we've got a communication teed up to go out tomorrow to everyone who has not been selected in the lottery saying, are you still interested in this? So that I can then take their actual kind of lender pre-approval amounts and say, yes, 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 this is the exact number for these ones. And then how do we navigate some of the other pieces if those numbers are not, you know.
But it would be really good to have the information in terms of how many dollars are we talking about?
Yep.
Well, and it's interesting, so I know doing the projections when we were building the Cottonwoods, the 140, we know the AMI limits are inflated with our non-wage income. So to me, it's not surprising that the actual demand and need is that lower numbers. And so for, this, you can always project on paper what the need is, but right now we're in real time, what people actually need. And that demand is in that, 100, 120, 100, 120 range. Then this just shows that it's actual information, and maybe it's an opportunity to partner with the city. Incremental, if that's what the community needs, then that's actual data.
Another piece of the puzzle is, so all of these lotteries that we've run were under the 2025 AMI table. Beginning of May 6th or 9th, they just published the 2026 numbers. It was a 6.7% increase in the AMI. So trying to correlate now where people we currently have, where does that move them down to? And reaching out to the households that were over income initially and trying to get them back in because they now fit within that 140% piece. So lots of moving pieces, but it's good.
Yeah.
I just want to, I think what we're dealing with is a little bit of everything here. You've got like several market, product type, financing dynamics at play all at once. And I would hate for anyone to get convinced that we do not have a need for product type serving 140 to 200% AMI.
Yeah.
That is absolutely not what is going on here.
You think we actually have the demand for it, so we won't have work.
I think we have the demand for
Okay.
it. I just think it is factual that the pricing of the Cottonwoods is affordable for someone in the 140% AMI bracket. What we're seeing is that all things considered with the Cottonwoods and where the pricing is in the market right now, there's not enough space between the price and the deed restriction to make product type of the Cottonwoods the thing that they choose.
So they can choose a free market, you're saying.
You're always weighing, same with the down payment assistance and loan programs, you're always weighing the trade-off of $10,000 up front to buy down your interest rate, or how long am I holding the unit for? Like, you're always making these trade-offs about the unit type, what the future of your family looks like, what the price is now, what the price is going to be later. So it is not a black and white, there's no demand at 140.
Yeah, no, I was just saying, but if the 140s can do free market, then that opens up the Cottonwoods to lower. And then the other question I had, Lala, is I don't know if there's a possibility for any of these units to work with Meg at First Impressions and have it be childcare certified. I know other places that, like, Steve has spoken a lot about other communities that when they're building, have a child, it's a unit that you can do home childcare. And you can get a qualification for a condo to do that. So I wonder if any of these ones that are orphaned right now, if it might be a thought to talk to May there's someone out there who wants to, that could get into one of these units, that'd be a real. So just a thought.
And sorry, in case what I just said wasn't obvious, what I'm talking about specifically is like to like product, not probably more so what someone in the 140 to 200% is looking for in product type. We are comparing Cottonwoods to Whistler Village Townhome, no deed restriction. Okay.
Thanks, Alyssa. Thanks for great job you and Araceli are doing with everyone as well. Our next item here is the executive director search.
Shelley, could I ask you one other question?
Yes.
Because I know recently you published some information on touring the various projects and how you're happy with Mission Rock and OPG and what they've done over the course of the last 2 months. I just want to make sure, are there any concerns we have about what they're doing?
No, none that come to mind. I feel like between what I'm seeing at the property and, you know, what I'm hearing from OPG and Mission Rock, that they're following up and following through on what they say that they're going to do. I think the big thing is the staffing. You know, they've really ramped up their staffing. When I was there last month, you know, they've got landscapers engaged. They're fixing all the, you know, doors at Anglers that were security issue. I noticed, I drove by there the other day and they're putting out mulch and kind of doing some beautification stuff at the properties. They've got the door going in at Alpenglow for the fitness room. That's starting up. You know, they're pushing people towards, you know, online for work orders and stuff, and utilizing the tenant portal. No, I mean, I think I mentioned this to you, but when I was over there last month, Anglers, that's like the best that I've seen that property look on the inside. Walking around the hallways, the amenity areas, I mean, it was like the stairwells, it was clean, presentable. You know, I'd say it probably hadn't looked that good since they opened the property. So.
Well, yeah, and I'm pleased with the progress they've made, and I just want to make sure that we keep, you know, pressure on, so to speak, for the long term. And
yeah, I mean, on those calls that we've been having on a monthly basis too, you know, I've also sensed like kind of a change in the tone from OPG to Mission Rock about, hey, this is your responsibility, you know, you need to address this, you know, and pushing on them a little bit more. And you know, again, I feel like they're responding and kind of doing what they said they're going to do. And when I, you know, match up with what's their updates are in the action plan, versus what I'm seeing on site and doing my walks, I am, you know, I'm noticing change and improvement. So.
and do we see also a corresponding drop in complaints and
Yeah,
I haven't heard much.
I checked in with Tom on that earlier this month, just to see kind of where things were from the city's perspective. And he said that there really isn't anything that's come across, either through, I guess, some of your online forms or, you know, anyone coming to city council and speaking during public comment. So, and we, as an organization, haven't been getting anything from tenants or residents either. So, all that's, you know, in a pretty good spot.
Nice to see.
Yeah.
Hey, we did get that one text about people concerned with the booting the cars.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, so
Yeah, that's the only kind of thing that I've heard on that. And Alpenglow is updating and revising their parking requirements and their process, and they're carving out guest parking spaces, and they're saying that that'll be rolling out later this month in May, and they're doing striping and numbering all the parking spaces as well, so it's clear on, you know, whose parking space is assigned to who. And I know that we had Shannon Lukens reach out about that as well. And we put her in touch with Carrie, the regional person at Mission Rock, and some of Mission Rock's communications people. And I know they had a conversation with Shannon about some of that and their plans and what they're, implementing and pushing out there to hopefully change some of that up. So,
Great, thank you.
yeah.
Is there any movement towards trying to work with the city and using like Fetcher Pond parking or other parking places, since it is underparked? I mean, there's not enough units for
I
parking. spots.
think they have brought that up as far as like, trying to, partner or reach out to the city about some of those things. But, now that we're in the summertime, parking is kind of less of an issue. I know that came up on the call last month. And so, I just encourage them to, well, it is summertime, but now's the time to work through that and get something in place before November 1st. So, yeah, I don't know if they've done anything with that, but I also know, Steve, you mentioned there was some issues with the signage that was being posted, and that's being addressed that they mentioned as well. So, yeah.
I'm just curious, is there a feedback loop of any kind, like resident survey? That
Yes.
OPG does?
Yes, they are working on they've done an initial tenant survey back in April. And so, they use like a net promoter score, and it was a pretty low response rate, as well as kind of the score itself. And so they're kind of using that as a benchmark, and they're planning on doing additional surveys later this year. And in addition to that, they have community engagement events planned. And like when I was over there for anglers, they were doing a pizza party for all the residents and tenants later that day. So, yeah, there's definitely a focus and an effort on tenant engagement.
Do we have a copy of that? I don't-
Of the survey?
Yeah.
Yeah, we
We
did.
do? Okay.
Mhm, yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome. So yeah, just a few more updates. We're making progress on the executive director search. There was an RFP that went out yesterday. Actually, we have 8 firms that were interested in reviewing the RFP and submitting a proposal. So that went out yesterday, mid-afternoon. I've just received a few responses. I've received it, thank you, that type of thing. But we're asking them to respond by June 3rd with a proposal, and by May 22nd with any questions they have on the RFP. From a grant perspective, and the other thing I'll just say on that is in my update last week, I provided a schedule to the board, kind of what that looks like as far as this whole search process and everything involved. So we'll continue to update that, and I'll update the board as we move forward on this whole process. Some grant updates. We've got a CHAPA direct effect grant that Emily and Elizabeth applied for, which is to support housing navigation programs and provide some other content, such as monthly home buyer classes. Hillside Village applied for $800,000 in congressionally directed spending to support our Hillside Village rehab project. Sounds like we were able to kind of pass the first threshold for that, and it's now moving on to the Senate Appropriations Committee. And then Emily and Elizabeth are submitting a letter of intent tomorrow for Colorado Division of Housing, some gap funding that would support our August tax credit application. That is not going to be, there's no sort of resolution needed on that at next week's board meeting. Anyway, just letting the board know that that's what's going on in the grant world.
Elliot, I'm jumping ahead. I know you've got a Hillside Village update, but we are, moving forward on this rehab, rehabilitation project, and we haven't really had a board presentation as to what exactly this is overall going to entail, why we're doing it, any preliminary pro formas. And I think we might be getting a little over our skis on this. I mean, because we haven't as a board even voted on to say we want to do this. I mean, I know we've had general discussion from, from the team throughout the last year, but we haven't had that overall board presentation. Why, what it's gonna cost us, what even the preliminary pro formas are, how it's gonna impact the residents. Because Hillside is our largest physical asset that the Housing Authority owns. And it's 55 families, and it's our very low income families. I mean, these folks have very little margin to have any sort of rent increases, or any, I mean, it's a very vulnerable population, and we have not had a board discussion on this. So I mean, I appreciate us moving forward and getting things done, but I really think we need to schedule something so the board can have an idea, particularly our new members and even any preliminary pro formas. I mean, if we're doing the 4% LIHTC, does that mean that we're gonna have to give up management? I mean, we haven't really had this discussion as a board level, and I'm not saying stop, we still need to move forward, but I do think we need a board discussion, a presentation on this.
Okay. Thank you.
If the rest of the board agrees.
Yeah, we can pull something together.
Okay, thank you.
Communications, some updates for you there as far as, just increased posting and sharing on social media. There's some statistics there for you to review. And then I'll also say Lorraine has been kind of actively engaging with different members of our community and the folks that we work with in the communities. She's done a good job, I think, in the last few weeks, really over the last month, kind of making sure to catch up with those folks and hear kind of where they're at and how what we do ties into to their various programs in and around the community. And then just a presentation. We had a few presentations last week that Lorraine helped assist us with, the City 101 presentation and the Yampa Valley High School presentation. Our Whitehaven Water and Sewer project, that's going to get pushed out till 2027, just as we work through the short-term rental and ad hoc committee process. We're also looking to incorporate the electrical infrastructure as part of our scope of work next year. And so we've been working with Baseline on getting some preliminary engineers estimates for that. There's some questions that the ad hoc committee had for us that we're currently working through, and we'll be submitting back to the ad hoc committee in the next week or two. But high level, we're looking to put out an RFP in November with the intent of kind of getting the contractor on board and work started in the spring of 2027. As Catherine noted, we have several policy updates here. I won't go through all of this, but did want to just kind of make a note here and recognize Elizabeth, who has really done a fantastic job in leading some of our policy initiatives and also analyzing how these policies affect us as an organization and also affect kind of residents that live at our properties. So kudos to Elizabeth and Emily for all their hard work on these various policies that you can see here have been passed and are waiting to come into law. Hilltop, we continue to kind of work through the lease and getting that over to the Forest Service. We are still looking, I think, for another week or two before that's all submitted to the Forest Service. But we're on the back end just working with Servitas on pro formas and kind of understanding the project and the kind of expenses with that in greater detail. and making sure that we're kind of aligning kind of the needs of the community with the project and ensuring that that'll be a successful project once it's rolled out. And then Hillside Village, we're continuing to have like weekly calls with enterprise community and our consulting partner, RCH Jones, and looking to submit a letter of intent in June, and then follow up with a 4% LIHTC application in first part of August. We have selected an architect for this project, and we also have a general contractor on board that's helping us with some pre-construction and estimating. And we just had our initial kind of kickoff meeting with them yesterday to discuss scope and schedule. And so still kind of very preliminary with that, but feel like we're making good progress and keeping that one moving forward. And as Catherine mentioned, I'll work with staff and get something together and have a presentation for the board at one of the upcoming board meetings. So
I do think we need to try to prioritize that. So we're submitting an LOI, we're looking at the LIHTC app in August. I think we need to make sure the board's all in on this.
okay. All right, and that's all I have for updates. If anybody has any questions.
Who's RCH Jones? I didn't know we had a consultant on that.
Yeah, they're a tax credit consultant that's helping us analyze the like USDA loans, there's different 515.
Oh, they're specific to tax credits.
Correct.
I just did want to follow up on Catherine's comment. How many in here, just by raise of hands, don't have knowledge of what we're doing at either Whitehaven or Hillside?
Specifically, I mean, I have a general idea, but we haven't seen pro forma. We haven't talked if this is the best time, if the 4%.
How many think we need detailed information on something? Okay. And that's what we'll work towards.
Yeah, that would be useful
I
under
agree.
any circumstance.
I agree. If you don't, I mean, the Whitehaven project scares the shit out of me, but that's okay.
You know,
I think Hillside's more immediate, I mean.
on Whitehaven or it makes a lot more sense to do all three tasks together. That's
I agree.
a much better plan. Is it going to survive another year?
I mean, it'll survive, but you know, already this year we've spent close to, I'd say, $30,000 repairing the water line there. We've had two leaks on the main line. So, and it's only May. Just a couple other things that I forgot to mention on the executive search. Everyone should have received a survey from Lorraine, just seeking feedback on what you're looking for in an executive director, qualities, traits, experience, those types of things. The deadline for getting those back to us is May 20th. So just encourage everyone to try to fill that out and get that submitted by next Wednesday. That'll also help kind of inform the search committee that we are going to engage in putting together kind of a resume for the ideal executive director candidate. And then also earlier today, you should have received another survey just about a board survey with some input on the direction of the board, where the board's heading, what are some kind of important, the direction and kind of the future of the board, I guess. And so if you could also spend a little time with that and fill that out and get that back to us, that'll, I don't anticipate you responding to that fully by next Wednesday, but that would help inform some of the discussion with the board meeting next Wednesday and kind of, download from the board retreat that you guys had and the surveys that you've taken and just kind of hopefully make a little bit clearer of the direction that the board's taking, so.
Yeah, with regard to the governance survey that, you know, if you could get it back as quickly as possible, that'd be great. I'd like to incorporate some, at least some of the data into next week's discussion related to the retreat, since it is another survey.
Will everyone see the results of that survey? Like, can we share the survey broadly instead of just like sharing the data? Like, I think it'd be great for all of us to see the raw results of that survey.
I'd like to see that too.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, we can absolutely share.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, thank you. Next action is an action item, and that is discussion of Elliot's compensation as acting executive director. Between now and whenever there was a new full-time director. So Sandy, do you have something for us?
Yeah, so this is a board direction item about our acting executive director's adjusted compensation. So Elliot would like to be paid as a bonus. And he'd like to be paid out at the end of the interim according to the following sliding schedule. So month 1 through 6, $2,000 a month, 7 through 9, 2,500 a month, month 10 through 12, 3,000 per month. And if it takes more than a year, then we'll just renegotiate the terms. And the clock started on April 9th when you guys named him acting executive director. This bonus, it's considered regular wages under the IRS. It's not subject to the 6% retirement match.
So it's supplemental.
It's just considered a bonus.
Sandy, I think last time we discussed this, I fully support this person. Thank you so much, Elliot, for stepping in. We are so fortunate and grateful to have you. But I think we discussed not using the phrase bonus because we are a government agency.
I spoke to our employers council about all the different choices, and their reply was do what the employee wants. That'll make for the most successful transition. And he said paying a bonus is just fine. So we could call it something different, but it's going to be paid as bonus at the end of the interim.
So Catherine, is your concern one of optics?
Yes. That's my concern. I think in effect, I don't know, some small things sometimes do matter, just.
You want to call it a supplemental?
Yeah, I'm not sure how everybody else feels, but I think maybe calling it a supplemental payment is probably more optically acceptable.
Okay,
That's my friendly suggestion.
that's fine. They'll all be treated the same as regular wages.
Yeah.
So that's what he wants to do. We don't need a resolution. We are going to wait on a supplemental budget more towards the end of the year as we see how long this takes, what the new person wages will be, and just do it all.
And I'm just encouraged, just have that at time be, when we do the supplemental budget, call it supplemental wages or whatever phraseology, that's not the word bonus, this has different.
Yes, sure.
Does anyone want to know the logic in terms of what the values are? Where that came from? Okay.
These are just agreed upon amounts. I think the sliding scale is to urge the process to move along more rapidly. Did you say, Elliot?
yes.
Yes. That's all.
Maximum liability is 25.5. Goes all 12 months.
I mean, unless it goes over a year.
We'll add a year, we renegotiate the terms, right?
Right.
Yeah, so you guarantee, we're basically agreeing to a maximum payout of 25.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Good direction.
Good to go.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Sandy.
Yeah. Thanks, Elliot.
Okay, we have another action item. We have a supplemental budget. This is Sandy and Alyssa. And this is for down payment assistance.
Yeah, this needs a discussion, ahead of time. We talked about it at the finance team meeting, but I'm gonna turn it over to Alyssa for the discussion, and if you decide to go ahead with it, then we just need to do the supplemental budget.
Yeah, so I briefly touched on this last month that this would be necessary at the beginning of this meeting. So today we've got 5 DPAs that are coming out of this fund. The fund balance is, I think we've got enough for 1 loan left in this account. Until the adjustment on the Prop 123 moves up to that 38%, there still are some people that don't quite fit into that and aren't being pushed into this other DPA. Also, this DPA operates up to 150%. So if somebody in that 130, 140 comes in and needs this assistance, the Prop 123 does not accommodate that. So we talked through the finance team as well as the real estate team. Last year, when we did the budget process, you guys agreed to do 200,000, so we just kind of did a match to that. So that's what this is about, is requesting $200,000 be moved from development into the DPA fund to fill this bucket of down payment assistance. Hires.
Any questions?
I'll just have the finance team review this and is in support of it.
Okay, so this is a resolution 2026-008. Need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second anywhere?
Second.
Motion by Cole, second by Michael. Could have a follow vote. Aye.
Aye.
Any nay? Passes unanimously. And another budget supplemental budget. For sale of phase 2 property. I guess Sandy, you're gonna do this?
Yes. This has already been decided by the board with the executed purchase and sale agreement of the phase 2 condos for $9 million. And it's been agreed that the earnest money of $5 million will come into us, and we pass it on to Mid Valley Condo LLC to pay the remaining construction costs. And then at the closing of the sale, the remaining $4 million will be used to pay off the infrastructure loan at Alpine Bank. And we just didn't know about this sale at budget time last year, so this is just the legal obligation to do a supplemental budget to show an increase of $9 million in revenues and expenditures in the development fund.
And Elliot, we've received the money and we've sent it
Yes,
in. Okay.
yes. It's been transferred to the condo company.
You're comfortable with that?
It happened.
Yeah, we fulfilled our obligations per the global agreement.
Okay. Okay, so I assume that needs a resolution.
Yes.
Okay, the motion for approval.
I move.
Mark, got a second anywhere?
Second.
Oh, second. All those in favor, say aye.
Yeah, I think there's additional discussion after that. I just was gonna ask, are there any additional updates regarding this whole Cottonwood? You guys didn't sound really enthusiastic about that process. Is there anything else the board needs to know?
Ally and I had a long conversation the other day, and I know Mark has been involved in all these conversations. I think part of that is associated with a strained relationship with our partners. That's pretty much.
Are we staying on cost estimates right now? I mean, how are things looking as we finish this Cottonwoods up?
Well,
Yeah. Okay.
Mark, go ahead.
you did, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, based on our conversations, we talked through this yesterday on our partnership call. And, according to our partners, there's enough money in the project to finish paying all of our expenses with Houseman, with other consultants. We've provided them with kind of
a closing schedule of units. So looking at, getting the construction loan paid off, getting the line of credit that our development partners put into the project paid off, that there's enough money to kind of cash flow all of that. And according to their, estimates, there's also a little bit of profit in this for them as well. But it also preserves our return of capital and their return of capital, and it also preserves the developer fee that we're splitting 51 to 49. So I think it's just, it's been a very long process, and I think it's just wearing on everyone. But I will also say that we're talking to them about assisting and helping with negotiating some change orders from Hausman. Just trying to be a good partner and closing up this project strong. So.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just add that there is enough income between the $5 million earnest money and the 31 million in closings to pay all the costs, and they end up with a very small margin. There's also a chance that they don't, but it looks like that they might have a very small margin. There is one issue though that's been discussed, and I created a spreadsheet just to look at it, and that's capital. And there is, it would appear that there's going to be a short-term need for some additional capital. We discussed that yesterday, and that's their responsibility. If there's things that could occur from a timing perspective that might avoid that need for capital. Well, some of it is there aren't enough funds to pay the contractor. That's key. And then there are other funds that, depending on the timing of closings, depending on people saying, I don't need to be paid, I can wait. There may not be a capital issue, but it's a legitimate discussion. They're aware of it. We talked about it yesterday. I asked them specifically if there is a need for capital, will Steamboat Partners provide that capital? And the response was from Todd that he couldn't answer that at that moment. He'd need to talk to his partners, but he did explain his thinking, and between my thinking and his thinking, it's someplace in the middle. I think it'll work out.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're in the middle of a vote. Why did we do that?
We have a motion.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Yeah.
All those in favor, by saying aye. Aye. Any nays? Passes unanimously. Okay, strategic topic. Perspectives on YVHA evolution and changes in the environment. Let's get one. Oh.
Item.
Oh, I'm sorry. Review and approval of the administrative services agreement for the pilot purchase of the deed restriction program of the city. Lisa.
Yes, so we briefly talked about this last time. We also, I believe, have Gates and Brad online, so if there are additional questions. At that time, it was a draft document, so it has gone through George, back to Jen at the city, and back to George for final review. So this is in its final form. Pretty confident in everything, and have carried on moving forward to move this project to hit a launch date in June. So do we have any additional questions or comments since last time? Because I think we covered most. It was just asked that George have a look over the agreement.
Yeah, I think the issue was we didn't want to approve it without actually having a document of approval.
Yeah, and so I sent that out yesterday afternoon. Sorry for that kind of late, circulating that late, but we just received it back kind of earlier that day. So, yeah, apologies for that, but should have a copy of that in your email.
Staff is still comfortable with the workload and capacity?
Yep.
What is the timing on that, getting all the documentation to the city that it required? Yeah, thanks, Ellie. I got that yesterday morning. What's the timeline of getting the whole process written up and given to the city?
So we met Tuesday morning. Gates has already started working on some of the outlines for the administrative procedures, excerpts of the drip that we'll be utilizing. I've already engaged the fair housing attorneys to send the deed restrictions off for their review. A lot of the actual documents that are needed will start once if this is approved today with the software system to start building out the application and some of those pieces. A lot of it's rinse and repeat because it's stuff that the housing authority already does with some of our other deed restrictions. So I think the longest and most of the workload is going to be just working through clearing up these administrative procedures and getting those to a final point. And I'll allow Gates or Brad to jump in if there's anything I'm missing on that.
So
I
is
think
Gates
that's
right-
everything.
Okay, so is Gates writing up the procedures or, okay, so we don't have to. And the next question, I was just wondering on the payment, I was looking at the last page of the document.
Yep.
So when it says transaction administration, is that a one-time deal or per transaction or how's this work?
Yeah, it'll be per transaction.
Okay, perfect. And same with ongoing monitoring and admin?
Yep.
So that ongoing is also per transaction?
Yep.
Any other questions?
Just real quickly, Mark had questions about the insurance that was called out in that agreement. We checked with our insurance provider, and all of our coverages are in line with kind of what's called out.
They are, we tweaked a couple of things, but they all work. As long as it's really, really crucial that there be a really clear written explanation provided to these owners, one that's better than what the insurance company provided or the management company. I forgot who wrote it. So it was, I mean, I understood it, but these are first-time buyers, and there needs to be an explanation provided to them so that they understand it, so we know they understand it. Because on the building insurance covers structure, and it covers the interior walls, and it covers all the roughings. And it also did cover drywall through taping. But beyond that, if there was the major loss, beyond that, they're responsible for what remains, and what remains is significant. And there is insurance to cover that. It's not a problem. But they need to get the right, in essence, owner's policy to be sure that they're covered. And again, most of these folks, they're first-time buyers, and they don't automatically understand this. So I believe that we need to make a big effort to create a letter, a 1 or 2 page letter that explains it clearly so that they go out and get the right coverage.
And when you say they, you're talking about the buyers.
The buyer.
And just real quickly, I was referring to this deed restriction program.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well,
You
I just covered it
yeah,
different
Yeah,
time.
yeah, that's all right. But you had asked about that last month. There's provisions in there on this deed restriction agreement with the city on the insurance. So I was just let you know I followed up on that.
Wrong insurance topic.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay.
The last thing I say is I think this program will be highly successful. We've already had people interested and lenders reaching out to us about people that are ready for it to roll out and see how it's utilized. So,
Which is another drop in the bucket for the point I brought up earlier.
yeah.
And it's exciting to partner with the city. I think the more opportunities we can find to partner with the city, the better for our community. So fantastic. Thank you, Gates. Thank you, Brad and Jen.
Yeah, I think it's an admirable program, actually. Okay, any other questions on this? We need a motion.
So moved.
Catherine? Second? Second. Mark? As a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Can I back up to the $9 million thing for just 1 second?
Okay.
1 minute. In all seriousness, we should write a gold-plated thank you to Kimball Crangle. You don't see any developer providing a deposit that is 55% of the purchase price and saying, here it is, you can use it. She was aware of the circumstance that we were in. And I mean, they're buying the land to do an affordable housing deal, but she structured that deal to save the behind of the Yampa Valley Housing Authority. And I believe that she needs a significant written thank you and acknowledgement that happened.
Are you comfortable with that, Helen? Okay, I think we voted on the deed restriction, right? Now it must be time for evolution.
We're gonna go back to the other insurance thing Mark brought up, or? Are we gonna go back to the other insurance quote thing that Mark brought up? That was about points units, correct? Is there a reason to go back to that, Mark?
What's that?
Mark just brought up his concern about the Cottonwoods insurance is a little out of order, but.
Yeah, sorry.
Do we need to go back to that before we completely change gears?
Well, I mean, Mark brought up a bunch of questions which we put forward to the insurance agent and he answered. And there's also literature and information that they're providing the buyers that outlines what the property coverage is and what their coverage needs to be as owners in the community. So that is happening on an individual basis as people are closing. It is what they've that's the information they've provided to us.
So from that standpoint, I think what Mark's comment was, somebody needs to simplify it so that the buyer understands what it is.
I mean, I've looked at what they're providing, and I think, you know, granted, it does take a level of kind of comfort and understanding insurance and stuff, but I feel like they've done a pretty good job of trying to simplify that so it's understandable and digestible to any buyer. The documentation I've seen, the letter.
I mean, I agree that they did a pretty good job, but I mean, I read the entire policy and asked a couple pages of questions and got them to get the insurance company to provide an explanation of what the coverage would be in the event of a loss, just against those explainable. So, I mean, this is it's not a huge deal. It's just, I'm just concerned, just similar to your concern. I'm concerned about the knowledge and understanding level of these new purchasers. And that it is their responsibility to get the coverage for the interior of the unit. The building itself has good coverage, but it stops at fire tape drywall. Everything else is the responsibility of the unit owner.
Mark, so are you saying like electrical trim, plumbing trim, furnishings?
Exactly. Appliances, carpet, doors,
I don't know if that's
electric
what
trim. This is a new,
it's so wild.
this is, it's a new, I forget the generic term. shell coverage. So it's becoming more and more typical.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm just, the reason I felt compelled to bring it up is because we have closings happening and they will be binding insurance policies. I do think this is important to hash out. I have a similar insurance policy with the townhouse that I own, and it's been that way since I've owned it for the last 6 years. So I don't know that they're like brand new, but they give us a letter attached to the policy that the association holds every year that says, if you dumped the house upside down, you need to have insurance on everything that would fall off the walls. And it's like, that's the plainest way they can say it. So if that's going out to the buyers, which I also have my association managed by Haven Association Management, so I think it's probably, can we just confirm that? It might just be as simple as making sure there's a letter that's attached to the association's policy that can then go from there to the individual homeowner's insurance agent that says, here's where you're responsible. Because it also suggests that they have coverage to make sure they can cover their portion of the association's deductible. So as long as that letter or something to that effect could be provided, this would be pretty easy to knock out, I think.
Can we do that?
Yes, yeah, that's the letter I was referring to that they're providing.
Okay. You've stalled long enough.
Oh, all right. Don't try not to wrap your heads around this graphic just yet. Jason's gonna talk you through it, but just a little context about where this graphic came from. When we had the board retreat, and all of the surveys that preceded the retreat, one of the comments that I left that I guess struck somewhat of a chord with the executive committee was just about the need to reset on the landscape that we are playing on right now. There has been so much change, not only administratively, and with the growth of this organization, but also the political landscape, the need that we're trying to meet across the board. It's just vast complexity. And Jason will kind of go through this, but I mean, even like pre 2012, but even 2012 to 2018, many people didn't even know the housing authority existed. And that's all changed now for the better. But as we're doing all of this work to sort of shore up our governance and make sure that we have the right strategic vision and structure and expertise at the table to lead the organization into the next phase of the future, we thought that it might be, this is what I said in one of my survey responses, and then Lou asked me to kind of continue it ahead of the debrief of the board retreat. Like it might be good to look at how our organization has evolved over the last several years or almost a decade. And so that's what this chart attempts to do. And there's so much nuance and political nature that isn't even reflected on this chart. And that's not the point. But it's just kind of like a way to sort of layer how some of the major milestones and assets under management and staffing structure has sort of evolved over time, as just more of a history lesson than really anything, mainly for our new board members, but jogging the memory of some of the board members who have tenure. And I wouldn't say that there's any like major ta-da from all of this, but it's really just, let's just take inventory to make sure that we're all working from the same set of assumptions about where we've been, where we're at, and how that informs how we're going forward, as a way to have, a really productive conversation. So does that suffice?
Yeah.
And then I talked to Jason about kind of what I had in mind. And he took the initiative and put together this. I'm gonna let him take over and kind of just explain.
Thank you, Michael. So just to get you oriented here, the x-axis, that's the horizontal axis, is time. The time frame is the time that I know the housing authority. There was a decade before me of the housing authority. I did not include that in here, but I want to acknowledge that existed. There's two y-axes. On the left, in tens of millions of dollars are assets at the Housing Authority. And then on the right are the number of full-time equivalent employees. So those are the things that are changing over time that I think kind of tell the story of how the organization has leveled up, maybe a couple levels in a very short period of time. And so the arrows obviously are the sort of major initiatives and when they occurred during this period of growth. It all started more or less with the reserves. There was activity that we did before that unfortunately I couldn't fit on the map, but we rehabbed Fish Creek's infrastructure. Catherine, you might be the only one here that remembers that. Maybe Sarah, Catherine. And so there was other activities that we were doing, but really like things that the leveling up of the organization occurred around the kind of 2017, 2018. That was the genesis of all of that. That was the finishing of the reserves, the model project that said, yes, we can take a little bit of resources and turn it into housing for our locals. It propagated the successful mill levy at the end of 2017, generating revenue in 2018, in which we immediately got started working on Alpenglow, Sunlight Crossings. As those things began to take on, or take shape, the organization's function was drastically different than it had been in 12, 13, 14. I'm not joking that we would have finance team meetings in the back room of an apartment at Hillside Village Apartments. And we would have to find chairs and everyone would sit around and we'd talk about unit XYZ and are they 30 or 60 days delinquent? That was the nature of the conversations that happened at the finance committee at that point. That and like, thank God Sandy fixed our financials and people can actually read them now. To flash forward 5 years later, we're talking about tens of millions of dollars in development happening with local investment coming in the hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. So a very different set of conversations happening over the course of a short period of time. And so we started adding, at that point, we started adding staff. We started bringing in more experts from a board level. And things just started ramping fast. Lala's been along for that ride. And so, on the heels of the successful development of Alpenglow Village, we immediately got another tax credit allocation for Anglers 400. Shortly thereafter, we were gifted Brown Ranch. Shortly thereafter, we were gifted Cottonwoods. We bought Whitehaven Mobile Home Park. We started working on the U.S. Forest. We might be able to put that one in like 2012. We'll start. But just the scale of our operations exploded during that period of time. And you see our assets and our staffing and the workload commensurately balloon. And so this is just a small history lesson for those of you that weren't along for the ride, of like how quickly we went from a very tiny little organization. Like when you see the FTEs at 3, that was Kate and Kent at Hillside Village Apartments taking care of that property, and then me. And now we have a dozen people working for the Housing Authority. And so it's been a fast growth, and it's caused all sorts of growing pains, but we've also accomplished a ton of amazing things. And so we are now at a new level You know, we have $50 million in assets. That's 5x what we had before. You know, we have 4x the number of employees. And the problem has gotten significantly larger. We get really complicated to start putting in like cost per square foot and issues, but like just to give you an example, the taxable valuation of the mill levy when we started in 2018 was around 800 million. It's now 1.7 billion. That's more than doubled in 8 years. And so that's the environment that we're working in. I hope that sets the stage for the conversation you wanted to have, Michael, but this is just a mini history lesson. Hopefully that's helpful for you all.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to kind of finish that off, that was a really good overview, Jason. But I mean, I think when you really look at the properties on there and you sort of look at the reserves to alkaline sunlight anglers, right? Like, I know that the size of the arrows is like maybe size of property or something, like Brown Ranch being like a line share. But for all, at the risk of oversimplifying what it took to get those properties done, when you look at the top 4 arrows, like wildly more complex than the previous deals that we had done. And so when we talk about like where we're going, one of the things that struck me and has struck me since we started doing all of this like introspective work is the housing authority has gone through all of this, but the board for more or less has been operating the exact same way. We've talked about all of these things as like we've been talking about the relevant thing that's happening at the time, but our structure and like the way that we're interacting with staff and doing strategic planning has more or less been pretty status quo. And I just think that like doing this history lesson and realizing the moment in time that we're in now is really important to kind of ground ourselves in as we kind of take the next steps as a board and as an organization. So hopefully this makes sense and is a good sort of level set.
Yeah, it does. Hopefully it, brings everyone up to an increased common level of understanding as to how things have changed. The reason we are continuing to evolve, this board is evolving. USFS Hilltop will be another unique or new way of doing business for us. Every time we do some of these, our risk profile increases. Cottonwoods, our risk profile is actually much higher than it's been in the past. In the past, we hire a developer, they do whatever they do, and we turn it over to them because they went out and they borrowed all the money. On Cottonwoods, it's a little different. It's harder because now we've got skin in the game. We're part of it. We're part owners. We're no longer the limited liability partner. So as the need arises, how much more risk are we willing to take? How do we take that risk? Are we capable of taking that risk and succeeding? And the projects that we're going to encounter, they're going to be more competitive. Costs are astronomical at this point in time. If you look at Cottonwoods, we spent somewhere around $600 a square foot, rough numbers. That's incredible. This is affordable housing. And so is there something that we need to look at in terms of how can we do things for lesser costs? I look at Cottonwoods, I think it's beautiful. Also look at, if you're familiar with Cruise Builders, they have these little townhouse things they put on industrial properties. 500 square feet with a 300 square foot loft. 800 square foot, and they're selling them for $400,000 to $500,000. No deed restrictions. If you look at what Gorman is doing, they're not talking about AMI restrictions. Because the AMI restrictions restrict what we can do and how we do it. You know, so do we have to look at different ways of financing? You know, for the $4 million we got from Prop 123 money, that's great, $4 million. But less than 10% of the cost of the project. And, you know, if we didn't have that, could we sell the 140% units and not have them at all? So there are a lot of questions that we're gonna have to hash out over the next few months in terms of where we want to go. Some of these questions are gonna come up when we talk about Slate Creek. You know, because there's going to be some different ways of looking at Slate Creek. You know, so we're an evolving organization. And I'd asked Michael to do this, and Jason so that we have some sense of where we came from. Understanding that we need to take a big step to compete in the future, to stay relevant in the future. And that's the whole intent of this exercise. Any questions, comments?
Observations.
Observations, thank you.
My only comment would be, yeah, thank you, Jason and Michael, and is that, remember, our mission is for affordable housing. We're not a developer for the sake of developing. And I think that's a critical core part of our mission. So like at Cottonwoods, you know, in my opinion, if there's free market units that 140% AMI can buy, that's fantastic. They should be buying in the free market. That means we can focus on where the need is. Our housing authority, we are not a developer for the sake of development. We're a developer. We can make sure people who can't afford homes in our community can have homes. And also this, I realized, Jason, just on the observation side of this, you know, you can't have all the little boxes and arrows be the exact, but Brown Ranch is a $24 million asset. So to remind everyone of what our, you know, what's our total assets on our balance sheet, around 48, you know, 45 million. Almost half of that is Brown Ranch.
Oh, yeah.
So just an observation.
Anything else?
Did you have something?
If appropriate, I have an observation.
Of course.
I don't believe that this graphic fully reflects the full scope of YVHA's work and impact. Just off the top of my head, it's missing Hillside Village, which is of course an existing asset, but the actual, as we'll discuss with the board at a future meeting, the deal is quite complex and it needs to be represented here. There's also quite a bit of work that's not development, that's a little bit less visible, but is incredibly important, that has evolved in the past several years as YVHA has grown. The staff has grown, expertise, capacity has all grown. Along with that, including having a nonprofit real estate team, the housing navigation and the direct support that some of the staff provide community members, offering technical expertise to other organizations, for example, helping to working with the Milner community to establish a resident community and purchase their park, working with the South Road Housing Authority, all of the policy and advocacy work that we do at a state level. There may be more, but that's just off the top of my head. And I don't think that this graphic really reflects that. But it should be in consideration just in the broader sort of context of the work, the scope of work and the impact that YVHA has now and going into the future.
Thank you. I was going to add on to that too. I was going to wait for another. I think that's very important because there's a lot of work that's done, but also it doesn't reflect all the money that we've leveraged as an organization, as our team. I mean, the $4 million, that's nothing to sneeze at. But if you look at the total grant money that we bring in because of our team working on it, I mean, that's been one of our successes. The Housing Authority is to leverage money. We are not going to be able to compete as a for-profit developer. We have to have subsidies, whether it's from SDR tax, whether it's from state, whether it's from federal. So I think that this is a great graph and it doesn't reflect all the impacts and benefits that the organization has brought
Yeah, I hope it doesn't, this was not meant to be like an all-encompassing thing.
Yeah,
We didn't mean to.
13 years in one
Whatever
slide.
anyone is doing, and shame on Jason for not getting Hillside on there. Just kidding.
Well,
But-
and also.
But
we
like,
had-
yes, I just want to make sure that the intent of it was how do we make something that's super complex distill down into a very visual thing, but we didn't mean to glaze over any of the other.
And also, we did have contract workers. I mean, Sandy was a part-time accountant back then when we had 3 people. So, and we quickly realized with the increased accounting requirements to have, clean audited financials, we need a full-time. So I think Sandy was the only contract back then, right, Jason?
Observation. Awesome, like absolutely incredible. The development work has been incredible, but just a little bit based on what I just heard you say about how we need to be a developer. I just want to point to many successful housing authorities are not developers.
Correct.
And I frankly think we should be looking at strategic partnerships. And I think we're on the same page. I just want to make sure we're all going to be having conversations about like what we do versus like, we're just going to become this big.
That is the objective. Okay, I don't expect us to be, I don't think we're capable of developing, honestly. And there is no intent to compete with developers, but I can tell you that cruise developers are going to sell their townhouse units for $400,000 to $500,000, which is attainable. Now, you throw in the 30%, this is what your gross income and this is what you can afford. That's a different situation. Okay, but it is attainable, and we need attainable as well as affordable housing in our community.
That's fantastic. Cruise is doing that. I mean, that's huge.
Now, they don't do deed restrictions or anything like that. But we will always do deed restriction, because we need to maintain.
We're serving a different population.
I don't agree with that.
You are?
No.
Why?
It's not us, then who? It's not gonna, it doesn't make money. If it doesn't pencil for us, it's not gonna pencil for anyone else.
Well, we have more grant opportunities.
Exactly. So we have also more like ability to subsidize.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So that's why if Cruise can do this, that's great. I mean, we could do it, sell for 200,000. I don't know.
The point is, things are becoming complex. We as an organization need to look at things either staying more complex, becoming more complex, or making things simpler. It's going to be big decisions that need to be made over the next year, or probably less, as we move forward. And some of those decisions that we make carry significant consequences associated with risk and our risk profile, as well as economics. If you count all the subsidies that went into Cottonwoods, it's over $20 million. Okay. That's what makes it affordable. And we're going to need those kinds of subsidies probably forever. How we get them, I'm not sure. Okay. Anything else on this? I'd like to get us to talk about Slate Creek. Okay, we had a meeting, I cannot remember when, a couple weeks ago now. April 30th or May 1st, that's what it was. You should have received a summary document in your packet. I attended, Shannon and Emily. I think slow as the process is going. It's very frustrating for me personally. But we're making progress. One of the key deliverables was is going to be a roadmap that will come out of all of this. And that roadmap will carry with it then what's our path forward to annexation. At some point, we're going to talk about scaling versus phasing, how we should approach the next steps at the Slate Creek neighborhood. So with that, I'd like to give it over to Emily and Shannon so that they can give their perspectives.
Sure, I'll start. So first, the summary that you have in your packet is
comprises several different documents. One is a board briefing that Shannon, Lou, and I prepared for you all in response to a request from the board. And so I think, you know, just be helpful to know if the content and the structure is helpful for y'all, since we'll be having standing agenda items to discuss the Slate Creek property and the community solutions project going forward. We tried to make it sort of in addition to the structure, or to the summary provided by Civic Canopy. But we also want to make sure that sort of all parties involved are operating off of the same recollection of what occurred at the meeting. So tried to call out some specific conversations that happened during over the course of the 2 days on April 30th and May 1st that are going to have implications for Yampa Valley Housing Authority that we'll need to discuss at future either today or at future meetings. And then we have some specific questions for you. So those questions were part of the packet. And one was throughout this, as the group created a roadmap to understand how we get from where we are today to the agreed upon end state, which is, you know, ideally housing for locals on that property that's affordable and meets other community needs and objectives. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, and the group acknowledged, you know, that there's a pretty defined scope right now of our third-party consultants, Civic Canopy and Community Builders, that basically just gets us through the next set of meetings in the middle of June, so about a month from now, and then that scope ends. And we're also getting to the point in the roadmap where there's going to be need for quite a bit of additional technical expertise. Scott, to your point about needing to bring in some development expertise. And so we don't have any sort of request for you right now, but we're forecasting that in the near future, this group is going to need to have a conversation about how we want to invest in moving this project along. And I think that there's a particular opportunity for YVHA to lead some of that technical analysis and work to support the Slate Creek Steering Committee and future community engagement. We do have the remaining grant funds from a grant from Route County to help support that. The staff structured the request to basically set us up for the ability to do that. But just wanted to put that out there as a future implication. We also discussed, so we have the broader vision statement, which we provided in the summary, but there's also a conversation about needing some guiding principles, which in YVHA's development work we've found is really helpful for us to sort of deal with the sometimes competing sort of tensions that come when you have to make decisions. And so we wanted to have a conversation about what those principles should be, and sort of without having that conversation, we've fallen back on number one, affordability, number two, sustainability, number three, connected and community driven, which some of you may recall were the guiding principles of the Greenwich Community Development Plan back in 2022. There was a lot of conversation about community engagement and communications, the difference between the two, and the different sort of. We did not get into strategies and tactics level, and we won't. We're leaving that to the staff experts to handle that, but the different sort of needs to engage the community at specific times. So that's point 3 in the packet. And then 4 was just wanting to confirm with you all what we heard last time, which was that the authority that the board is giving the team that includes Shannon, Lou, and I is meant to be sort of iterative, and you want us to kind of come back at each meeting and talk to you about what we've heard and forecast where we see decisions going before we sort of have a defined set of goals that we can work within. So we wanted to reconfirm that and see if we needed to revisit it.
Any comment on that?
My only question on the roadmap, one of what I think the critical to the roadmap before we can really move forward for a lot of things is going to be the city capacity. Because, until the city can say, this is how many units, whatever it is, whether it's 0 or 400 or anything in between, that the city can absorb. Like how many units can we build out there that current city services can handle? Until we have that, and to me, the road doesn't start until we have that.
There is a constraint analysis that is in the process of being completed. It should be completed very soon. We talked about that at the meeting. And the general discussion was, so what is the constraint we're talking about? It is the constraint about the ability for the city to serve today without future investments of significant money. So today, what can be put out there? And so that conversation is inside the city. There's some general guidelines, and what I can tell you is the constraints we had at Brown Ranch in the first annexation were 1,100 units. Those constraints have narrowed. There's greater demand for all services. And there's less availability of things like water.
And we didn't get into those details. I'll chime in. I think that's a little too in the weeds, Lou. I think
Okay.
The roadmap that I wrote down from my notes that I hope is in the summary from Civic Canopy is the first block, and these are like umbrella terms, but defining our shared priorities, identifying funding for key milestones. Like once we have those shared priorities, we're kind of road mapping, okay, we know we're gonna need this, this, and this. How are we gonna fund this? Setting affordability targets, and then completing feasibility and constraints analysis. So that's pretty early on. And then after we have our feasibility and constraints, then we're looking into what is our phasing and scale strategy? What are the scenarios that fit within the feasibility and constraints? And then once we have scenarios, like, and weaved in all of this is community engagement, obviously, and outreach. So there's not just one community engagement block, but it's weaved within all of these. Eventually narrowing down those scenarios to an actual development plan, which would hopefully then lead to an annexation agreement and a vote. So that's really high level, the roadmap that was outlined over those last 2 days. And to Emily's point and to the memo and the notes that you guys created, I think that's why the questions are posed. You know, do we, are the guiding, like what are our shared priorities? Are these the guiding principles we still want to have? How are we going to potentially fund additional feasibility and constraints analysis? We know that the city has theirs coming out, but what additional feasibility and constraints will there be that are not included in that analysis? So it's a very high level roadmap at this point, but certainly feasibility is very early on in the roadmap.
The reason I'm saying that is the city comes back, and I have no idea what the number is going to be. I mean, the city, there's a certain number of units the city can absorb, whether it's parks, whether it's cops, whether it's whatever. And if they come back with a very low number, that's going to determine our affordability. It's going to determine a lot of different things. Because what if they come back with 0? What if it's 100? And the other question I had is there hopefully at least a discussion in there reminding everyone that the 9% short-term rental tax was set at 9%, recognizing the need of that, of basically the ballpark number at that time was 10 million a year to go towards Brown Ranch infrastructure. So I hope in this discussion, there's some historical memory as to the STR was passed at 9% for Brown Ranch infrastructure. Now I know things changed, it's not specified in the ballot language, but hopefully the team is remembering that's why we have the STR. So just a comment.
Anything else? David, your recollections?
I mean, I think it was fair representation of everything that we talked about. You know, to speak to the STR dollars, that hasn't been brought up.
I think it might be a nice, a good reminder.
Mark?
The recordings from the last 2 meetings are still not online. Does anybody know why?
I have no idea.
Are they, did you check Engage Steamboat?
No, I've just been looking at the city's YouTube pages where all the others are.
They should be on Engage Steamboat. which is the page that this city is using for just the entire project.
So that's maybe more up to date than YouTube.
I believe so.
Okay.
I know that Brad is still online, and can jump in if we need to clarify that. They're there. The YouTube,
They should be on YouTube as well as Engage.
they're on the YouTube, City of Steamboat Springs. So if you go to City of Steamboat Springs YouTube page, Slate Creek Steering Committee's, our meetings are on there.
Oh, yeah, those recent too?
Yeah.
Okay, that must have just been a recent upload.
Yeah, I don't know when it was uploaded, but, 3 days
A
ago.
hot tip for everyone, if you really like, I think these summaries are great, but listening to the conversation that this group is having is really where the substance is. I've listened to every one of them, and my reminder to listen to the last two is now significantly overdue. And post it, but you can put it on playback speed 1.5% and listen to the 3-hour meeting in like an hour and a half. Ooh, great thing to do when you're hiking. So these summaries are good, but the essence is listening to the debates. And I think that you have the time and can do that, it would definitely make for more engagement as we try to direct our 3 representatives.
Good advice on playback.
I would agree with that. If you all are able to watch the recording, I think that there's a lot of good conversation happening between everyone in those rooms, and it will make for more robust conversation in these board meetings if you are able to watch those recordings, because I think that the summary was excellent that you guys did, but there's just a lot to capture in 6 hours that so you have the minutes, you have your board member summary, but you also have the recording, and it's gonna go a long way if you're able to tune in or recap.
My observation is this is still very process oriented, and I think that's, Angelica's talking about in terms of high level thinking. We're not ready to draw pictures and say, here's what we want to build.
I would use a playback speed of 3. It sounds funnier.
We did kind of hone in on what is the purpose of this group. And I think that of the Slate Creek Steering Committee, what is the purpose of, one, our work with community builders? What is the purpose, because it's not our goal right now to create a development plan. Everyone in that room agreed, we want a developer in the room to help us with that. We want the feasibility study first. It's not really our goal right now. Right now, our goal is to create a roadmap so that when community builders leaves us in June, we know what we're doing moving forward. We have an actionable plan to move forward and to implement as the Slate Creek Steering Committee. So right now we're in that phase of creating that roadmap so that when they leave us in June, we know what our action steps are. So I think the community right now may be thinking, oh, we're not negotiating the annexation agreement. We're not deciding how many units we're gonna build right now. I think it's important to know what we're not doing just as much as to know what we are doing. And we're not doing those in the weeds things yet. We are making a plan so that when community builders leaves us, we have a roadwork of, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We are going to fund more feasibility and constraints analysis. We are going to bring a developer on board. We are going to do this. We're laying that out right now so that we can keep the ball rolling. And I think that's an important piece.
Constrained analysis will be presented to council on June 2nd.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve.
Here's a question about getting principals. Are they prioritized?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Those are ranked.
They are ranked in priority order. Yes.
And sustainability, that's environmental sustainability or in affordability?
I think last time it was a catch-all to incorporate environmental sustainability, but also the sustainability of the
Affordable housing.
Exactly.
So it is a catch-all.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, and again, these are up for conversation and reordering, or changing.
That's what I read, that's just environmental sustainability and financial sustainability. So this is a community property, so it should be affordable for community today and 5 years, 10 years, 50 years.
And on that, and this is not this is objectified, this is not subjective. Environmental sustainability and affordable housing do not always mix. And so just like making sure from a guiding principle, this is not an opinion by any means, this is just a cost standpoint of things. Just making sure if those are guiding principles, that you're not creating a conflict with this.
Right, and perhaps they should be separated out and then reprioritized.
And I would even say that the housing affordability encompasses that sustained affordability, if there's a qualifier in there. But from my point of view, I think as a housing authority board member, that's our number one priority. Is that was the one thing that was given, the one priority that came along with the plan was to build affordable housing. And they did not, the donor did not handcuff us in any way with any kind of restrictions or any kind of clawback or anything like that. It was just go forth and build affordable housing. So that's our mission in a nutshell. And I think that we have to fight to keep that as high as possible.
And I think maybe maybe the environmental and financial sustainability should be broken out, because it's all very symbiotic, because as far as the long-term affordability of the housing costs, you need to have strong environmental, you need to have low utility costs, whatever. So, but I do think that environmental sustainability versus fiscal sustainability maybe does. What's on.
Anything to add, John?
So I guess my only thing was the last time that we discussed the steering committee, I guess the board decided that they wanted briefs within 72 hours. And I know that this was not within 72 hours. This was just with the board packet. Is that acceptable moving forward? Or would you like it as soon as we receive the notes from Civic Canopy for us to send out the brief?
Acknowledging that it also means that Lou and Shannon and I need to get together, debrief, come up with like the implications and questions. It's not as simple as just getting the notes and forwarding them.
Prefer a longer time to receive the documents if it means a better output of regurgitation.
Great. Yeah, but this was excellent. Thank you, guys.
I do think just another kind of planting the seed on like a need potentially for a future funding request to support this work. Commissioner Salinas, you mentioned when Community Builders leaves us, but I don't think that that's a given that that's happening. And I think that a major conversation that the steering committee needs to have is, are we actually able to have these conversations and work our way through the roadmap, i.e. steward the process, which is the purpose of this group, without being facilitated at this point? Like, have we built the muscle to be able to do that without what I would describe as pretty heavy duty facilitation to make our three organizations, work well together and move this forward?
Yeah, and I think that that's a city conversation with YVHA, for like the county is happily participating in this. And I think I'm saying that because that's what Community Builders alluded to, right? But absolutely, the facilitation, it will be helpful. It will be in any capacity, whether it's them, someone else. I don't know how that's going to unfold or what that will cost, but I think that is a conversation we need to have. I would agree.
I think Kayla alluded to that. That was going to be part of the conversation coming up.
Right, and they did mention, we're familiar with this work. We know how to do this. We facilitate. This is in our scope of work. We do this. And so I think there's certainly an open door to continue working with them, but I think that conversation has yet to be had yet.
So I think we have to have that
Nor
conversation.
who will pay for that.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of wondering, June is tomorrow, basically. And the questions that caused this to, play out like it did last time still haven't really been answered, which I'm not saying that this is moving well. I know there needs to be a process to make sure you get those answers in the right way. So I'm not saying hurry up or something, but those are the most difficult parts of what you're tasked with doing. And so not having a facilitator lined up to, it's one thing to have a roadmap, but when there's no one in there, because she's popping y'all on the wrist left and right for interrupting or disengaging. It's hilarious, actually. Like she's really good. So I'm like, that just feels a little dangerous to say, here's a roadmap.
Well,
Go
and
have at it.
Dave and Steve, what is their contract and how is that outlined right now through the city and what does that look like?
We've asked the question, we asked Brad, or I asked Brad, actually right before the last meeting. He didn't have an answer. He's gonna get back to us. I think there's the ability to ask for more.
Well, this phase is done in July, I believe, July or August. It is done. Then, council will discuss where we go from here, whether there's a path forward. So I don't think we haven't reached any kind of consensus because we haven't talked about it yet until we see where you guys come out. But this phase is supposedly going to end this summer.
So then would it be helpful if the Housing Authority Board, you know, I don't know, I don't want to say write a letter, but just shared their thoughts on like, hey, this is what we feel like we need moving forward, or just let you guys flesh that out? I guess what type of engagement would you like to see, to Michael's point, like if people in this room feel like there's value in facilitation, would you like to hear that before, or yeah?
Well, I think there's a couple of things we need to hear. One is we need to have the capacity constraint analysis and really understand what, kind of options we have out there. And we will have that, as I said, in a couple of weeks. It's just there's a lot of technical information in it, and it's trying to be put together in a way that people can understand it. So I think that's a big piece of it. And I think that the other big piece of it will be the recommendations of those involved in this process and how the Housing Authority and others feel about the value of it and where we're heading and where the next steps based on that constraint analysis. So I think it's kind of open right now. But I think everybody's input would be appreciated as well.
Yeah, I'm hearing from the members that facilitation is not only preferred, but probably necessary. I'm definitely sympathetic to that. I do want to make sure that we are getting that contractor consultant in on any kind of next agreement or any kind of next phase or next scope of work. To align, but that's identified in here, so.
You mean a development consultant?
I'm sorry, yes. What did I say?
Contractor.
Yeah, sorry. Was still back in my head. Yeah, so it kind of, that feedback from the committee's everything to me. If you guys feel like facilitation is still needed, then that's what's needed.
I would share one other point, and that's really more my own personal one, although I think there's other counselors who probably feel similar. I'm not sure how many of them do, but I think some of us have a tremendous sense of urgency to move forward. And if there are options, scenario options that we want to take to the community, the quicker we do that and engage the community, the better. And the quicker we move forward on getting something going on at Brown Ranch, if that's indeed viable, the better. So to the extent that we have a process in place that gets us there quicker, I am more supportive of that stuff than a process that slows us down. So process and progress is where I am. Somehow I have a sense of urgency, and I think there's others who also have a sense of urgency here.
I have that sense of urgency.
So.
Yeah, I share that sense of urgency, and just to that point about the facilitation, I think that one way that we can mitigate that is to for staff to do some work behind the scenes so that we don't have a big kind of gap between when the contract ends and then when we get a new one to continue the facilitated work and the roadmap.
Well, and also I'm just thinking of several points that have been raised in this meeting, some in this conversation and some in others. Like, what conversations do we need to be having right now as a board, not waiting for the questions to come to us from the group so that we can have time to hash it out? Like, I don't want to be given 45 minutes in a meeting to decide how many let's just say capacity analysis comes in and they say, okay, you get 400 units. I don't want to have to decide that as a board in 45 minutes. I'd like several meetings for us all to be able to work through what that looks like and what we would support as the right product mix. So that then Shannon, Lou, and Emily can bring that too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's, well,
To Steve's point, like if there's a small project that can get off the ground, yet none of the dynamics about what that project would look like have been discussed collectively.
one of the conversations that started last time around, and I think will continue into the next sessions, is the difference between scaling and phasing. Scaling is, let's have a little project and let's focus on that and then move forward. Phasing is kind of what we did. Here's all of Brown Ranch laid out. Let's do phase one. I gotta run, sorry. And phase one was 1,100 units in the first annexation discussion. So that discussion, we started to have it last time. I think that's a fair comment, right, Dave?
You started that.
I did. I knew that's why we had it. I knew that's why we had it.
I'm still looking at 200 or 300 or whatever the constraints analysis.
So the question, one of the questions that's out there is, do you master plan the entire site? And go in with a phasing program, which, like I said, that sounds an awful lot like Brown Ranch phase one.
Lou, we heard loud and clear from the community that they do not want a
I-
master plan. I mean,
So why is that even?
Yeah,
you're
why is that
wasting
even
time
on the
debating that
table?
if we have a very short runway with the facilitator. And you already have a business case study that says what not to do.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think everyone in the room actually said we don't want a master plan.
yeah, I mean.
I think so. I don't think the facilitator accepted that, but I think you are correct.
I think one of the other things we brought up at Ask Jay was just sort of, how in depth do we need to get to bring this to the voter? And so, not that it needs to be vague for the voter, but maybe it doesn't have to have every detail knocked down until we find out what their appetite is for this project. So to your point of wanting to have to make those decisions, next, I'm not sure if we have to get to an annexation vote. That's up to the board if you want to have all that info, or whether you think that info is, necessary to get to an annexation vote.
I mean, if you say that we get 200 units and you can't tell the community what type of those 200 units are, I don't see how you get a single person to vote yes.
Nailed down.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it has to be, 1, 2, 3 Robin Hood Lane and it's gotta be a 3 by
Michael,
4
for the
bath,
sake,
but
for
I'm
the
saying,
sake of
like,
time, just to quickly answer your question, and this is my personal opinion on what can the board be doing now? I think identifying funding for a plan, we're gonna have to fund a potential new feasibility studies, whether that's looking if it's 200 units, 400 units, I think we need to identify funding sources for the work that needs to be done outside of the $500,000 we have from the county grant. Maybe that is STR money, maybe not, but I think we need to kind of get that in a row so that if it's oh, we need to pay for this study now, or we need to hire this consultant now, we have a plan to fund that stuff, because that's gonna be the first things in my personal opinion that need to get done. Is how are we gonna pay for this? And maybe we don't need to pay for it, but what does that look like? And then I lost my second thought. It'll come back to me. But I think that stuff we could be doing now of okay, we know there's a sense of urgency to this. We know we're gonna need to look at this type of consultant, or bringing on this type of thing, or doing this type of study. Here's what we have from the last time around. What can we repurpose? What needs to be redone? I think all of that we can start doing now.
When I read this, a couple of things struck me, and these are big picture, and the big picture item just got touched on. There was a comment in there about growth, no growth. Should you do this at all? Yeah, it's a fair question, but honestly, kids, there's only one direction the town can develop, and that's west. There's only the land pretty needs, needs to be contiguous, so I think as a group, we could probably say, at least we're planning for growth. And then to the point of the plan, I think that it has to be master planned. Now, what is the definition of master plan? I don't think that you need to define what each type of building and how many units are gonna sit on this location. But I distinctly think you need to take the 540 acres and say, I'm gonna just make some stuff up. The roads are gonna go here. There's gonna be condos here, single family here, some commercial over here. And probably the number of units you could put in those areas are gonna be evident. And given that, you can then say, I've got the need and or the resources to do 50 single family. So let's go over here and do the 50 single family. But I don't think it's wise to say I'm gonna do 100 units and we're just gonna happen to take the piece of property that's right next to the subdivision that Jeremy's building. We're gonna take that because it's right next to existing infrastructure. And I mean, that could screw up the entire project because you haven't got the rest of the project thought out.
It's a balance. And we
So-
talked about that.
Pardon me?
No, I agree. It's a balance and we talked about that, like not needing to be detailed, but knowing that whatever we do needs to fit into a larger picture eventually and building it to that. So I think that that's definitely
So-
on our mind. But to your first point about like the comment about growth versus no growth, I think that's like a clear example of why it's important to watch the recording. Because I was the one who brought that up. I said, growth is coming to our community, whether we want it or not, and it's our responsibility to mitigate that growth. And the urban growth boundary is that West Depot area. That is what master plans direct growth. And then the comment in response came from Tom Leeson, who said, we don't have to grow, we don't want to, we could shut the doors. We could pull in the urban growth boundary. And so it's an interesting dynamic, but that is where that came up.
And the answer to that is, yes, you could do that. And then if you think it's expensive to death, just wait 12 months.
That's what I said.
And you'll find out what expensive is.
Say the quiet part out loud.
And Mark, I agree. I do think it's wise to do a whole master plan. I'm just looking at the annexation. What we heard pretty about it there for the voters as far as annexing in, they want the very specifics. So I would think the master plan idea is wise, but when we're talking annexation, have it be a specific Slate Creek neighborhood, this many units, whatever it is, this mix, whatever it is, specific cost to the community. I think that's just more feasible, showing success, have a really great neighborhood, people love it, then, do it in singles and not a home run.
Well, if you have the master plan, pick and choose where you want to go, and you can take on those, you can sell that portion to the public. But I think you need to plan the whole subdivision.
I just don't think you can annex.
There's a lot of that work done. I mean, the best location for the roads.
Right.
Have all been identified.
Some of that stuff is gonna be sort of obvious, like roads.
I think what I'd like to do is to just close the conversation down on this. Is, that this has been heavily process oriented. We're gonna have a roadmap. I do think we're gonna get into a discussion about the scaling and the phasing and the difference between the two. And moving fast is preferable to moving slow in my mind. And I'd like to get us moving in a direction. And we'll see how that ends up.
Move smoothly.
Move smoothly.
Smoothly.
Purposely.
Right.
Purposely.
Do you need an answer on number 4?
I think we're okay this time unless Shannon or Lou, you.
No, I feel like we're on the same page. You.
I will say, I will bring to the city, probably the concept of having another facilitator. Hopefully somebody other than Civic Canopy, maybe even somebody in the development world, could help us facilitate. They're a little too trustfully for me. In this realm of the process, they've been really good and have been awesome, but I think to get moving faster.
I agree. I still think a huge missing element is the entire community engagement portion.
Dave, the two what for you?
Sorry?
What was the word you used there, two what for you?
Boo-boo, too many trust falls.
Trustfully.
Trustful. Thank you.
Okay, we have a list of team meetings upcoming, that'd be great, but a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Yeah. First from Catherine, second. Martin, what side of the vote?
Sure.
I'm a Meeting,
I'd say